Expendable is hard-hitting, over-the-top video game violence served with a side of self-awareness. It aims to do nothing more than blast aliens, and it uses as little narrative as possible in order to do so. Questionable controls derail what could have been an instant classic, but even with its frustrations, Expendable is undeniably fun. Essentially a lab-grown soldier, players occupy the fleeting life of an on-demand meathead. It's low-hanging fruit, but Expendable tackles video game tropes in such a head-on way one can't help but laugh. Whatever you think of the gameplay mechanics, Expendable's intro cinematic is both insightful and shallowly hilarious, and a perfect example of why you don't necessarily need riveting dialogue or characters to make a video game fun or impactful. Though built for home consoles, Expendable plays like an arcade shooter. The game hails from an era where arcade ports to home consoles were a mainstay and cost as much as any other game. There's no saving mid-stage, forcing players to complete levels in a single sitting. Expendable also operates on a lives continue system, meaning too many deaths and you're back to the beginning of the game, not the stage. The goal in each level varies, though it almost always ends in a boss fight. Prisoners can be rescued for bonus points, and key cards are sometimes required to move forward, prompting some light backtracking. Figuring out what to do among all the visual noise can be confusing at points, but with a bit of exploration, the solution is never far off. It wouldn't be accurate to call Expendable an isometric or top-down shooter, as the camera placement changes frequently throughout any given level. At times it will be right behind the players, at others at a bird's eye view. Expendable's set-piece implementation and level architecture are fantastic, transferring the type of silly, over-the-top animated action one would expect of a 2D shooter like Shock Troopers into a 3D plane. Mechanically, Expendable does nothing radically different from its contemporaries. Red barrels explode, and conveniently placed crates hold new weapons. New enemies are introduced regularly, each with their own attack pattern and weakness. Utilizing a tank-style scheme, maneuvering your character about the map can be a testing affair. There is a strafe button to assist in dodging fire, though the winding nature of the maps means you'll need to be constantly checking your flank or adjusting your aim. It ends up feeling more akin to driving a small bumper car than maneuvering a human being. Even into the later stages, I still found myself running past pickups or into hazards, prematurely ending my game. Too often the controls become the challenge instead of a seamless portal into the game world. It's around the halfway point of the game where Expendable's difficulty not only begins to take its toll on player lives, but also on their patience. Hordes of Smash TV-style enemies flood the screen, making it a literal bullet hell. With only 5 continues to complete the entire game, many players will probably find themselves at a crossroads, deciding whether to press on with the few scant continues they have left, start over, or cheat. This frustration is not due to any egregious design flaw, but rather the aforementioned control issues. Expendable is fun, but not fun enough to demand so much of the player's time and effort as it does. Expendable is violent without being too crude and loud without becoming obnoxious. Character animations, stage textures, scripted sequences, and special effects all combine to make for a gripping, ever-exciting play of on-screen carnage. The sharp polygons show the game's age, but with a smooth FPS it hardly matters once the game is in action. The pumping techno soundtrack scoring the campaign suits the game to a T, and it's hard not to crank the volume when rushing these future war zones. Expendable is a perfectly fine shooter soiled by some truly weird controls. It's so close to being a classic, one's enjoyment of the game will partially depend on their love for arcade-style progression, and partially depend on their patience for the ineffective controls. Whether you play the game with a gamepad or keyboard, on a Dreamcast, PlayStation, or PC, Expendable never feels quite as good as it should. It won't win over those uninitiated to the genre, but to fans of this era of arcade shooting, it's worth the humble price.